Legend says there's a monster in these parts. A monster that once ravaged the peaceful settlement of harbour and town, placing terror and fear in the hearts of its citizens. Until one day, a mysterious figure known only as Steve came and vanquished the monster and locked it away in a castle deep in the mountains, vowing it should never trouble the town again. All was good in the land, and the citizens celebrated, but then Steve vanished, and he's never been seen since. With Steve's disappearance came fears that the monster now lay in wait, ready to rise once more and wreak havoc in the world. And so the search for a new hero began, one that was brave enough or foolhardy enough to face and tame the monster once more. That's where we come in. We must go and find Steve, or if not, we'll find the monster. Hi guys, and welcome back to Grandpa Playing Games and DERAIL Valley. To complete today's epic quest, we're going to have to find the magic keys that will open up the monster's lair. We'll have to follow a treasure map. We're going to have to mount our rusty steed, and we're going to have to climb the steepest mountains. Will we be able to find Steve, or will we find the monster instead? Let's see. Our first task is to find and locate the magical key to the monster's lair. And after fruitless searching throughout harbour and town, I've been advised that we may be able to find it somewhere within the shop. It was at this stage that I first caught glimpse of a picture of the monster, from the times where it used to roam freely, wreaking havoc amongst the citizens of harbour and town. Its steely eyes and cruel mouth sent shivers up my spine, as I knew that I would be confronting this monster soon enough, a monster that the residents of harbour and town named simply Plague. Buried somewhere deep within the catacombs of this shop was going to be the elusive and hard to find... Oh, wait, there it is. Having dutifully paid my 7,000 pieces of gold for the key to the castle, or rather the garage, where Steve had locked up the monster, I hurried back to find my rusty steed, because I wanted to begin my quest under the cover of darkness, so that I might maybe sneak up on the beast. My faithful workhorse was right where I'd left it, and I wasted no time in starting it up. The night was falling, and I needed to get this quest underway. The rumbling of the engine was matched by the rolling of thunder, and the rain, as it started to fall, reflected my dampening enthusiasm for the task ahead. But proceed we must if we were going to have any chance at all of keeping our date with destiny. A quick glance at the treasure map I'd acquired earlier helped to reassure us that we were definitely headed in the right direction to reach the monster's lair. The spinning wheels indicated my steed's reluctance to press forward, but I urged it on despite the pouring rain. We open up the map to check our location. We're here, the blue triangle, and the track ahead goes directly to the garage where Steve has held that beast for so long. Onward I cry, trying to make myself sound brave in the process. It's obvious by the rusted tracks that this path has not been trod for a long, long time by man or machine. As we struggle to get up the steep gradient of the hill, we realise that Steve has made some fantastic choices in trying to hide this monster from the rest of the land. Only the foolhardy would continue on from this point. Yes, we're continuing on. As we emerge from the tunnel to the inner sanctum of the beast's lair, we're filled with trepidation, not knowing what may be around the next corner. The speed limits, 10 kilometers an hour, 20 kilometers an hour. They all caution us that there's danger ahead, and yet we still press onwards. The sound of the engine working so hard gives rise to the fear that maybe somebody or something might hear our approach. But there's not much we can do. We have to keep going. We have to try to find Steve. And if we don't, we have to vanquish the monster ourselves. gentle sweeping curves and the slow labouring of the motor have a hypnotic effect, and I found my eyes grew heavy as visions crossed my mind of the dangers that lay ahead. I started to imagine what would happen if we lost our brakes as we approached the monster's lair and alerted him. Oh no. And then I woke up. I don't know how I managed to stop that locomotive in my sleep before it hit the garage doors, but that didn't matter right now. What mattered was that I cut the lights as quick as I could and also shut off the engine in case I was discovered. I quietly slipped out of the cab and reached into the backpack for the lantern that I had stored there before. With the lantern dimly lighting my path, I cautiously approached the door to the monster's lair. Having put the lantern down to where I could see the padlock that was holding the door shut between me and the monster, I reached into my backpack for the keys that would open the vault. As the lock dropped to the ground and the doors sprung open, I was startled to see those same steely eyes looking at me. I didn't know whether the monster was awake or asleep. I didn't want to wait and find out either, so I grabbed my lantern and I headed back to the safety of our locomotive. There I was going to get a better look from the comfort of the locomotive's cab. I turned on the headlights. Not quite sure that I had seen what I thought I'd seen, and oh my goodness, there it was. An evil-looking monster staring right back at me. Asleep or awake? I'm still not quite sure. One thing I was sure of, however, was that if the monster was still asleep, I needed to get there and chain it up and capture it as quickly as possible. So I wasted no time. Our trusty steed screamed in anguish as I propelled it forward, ready to engage the beast. Stepped slowly forward, not wanting to anger it any more than it might possibly be. Oops. Oh well. I leapt out of the locomotive, lantern in hand, and got ready to subdue the beast. And I realised that having a lantern in hand probably wasn't the best idea, because I needed both hands to subdue the beast. So I put the lantern on the ground. Then I started to crouch down and connect the hoses and chains that would place the beast under my control. This monster was going to be tamed. I chained it up, connected the air hoses, and then I connected the multi-unit coupler so that now the monster would be totally under my command, or at least so I thought. Make sure the brakes are activated. It's very hard for us to see what we're doing at this time of night. Thank goodness I'd had the foresight to buy the lantern earlier. Now the monster was under my control. The question still remained. Where's Steve? What happened to him? The monster was silent, giving no indication of what, if anything, the monster had done with him. So I decided to return back to our rusty steed and shut it down for a while, because rather than risking the return journey in the dark of night, now that the monster was safely trussed up, I was going to shut down the engine and spend the rest of the night seeing if we could find any trace of Steve. As night turned into day, I had to reluctantly accept the fact that Steve was nowhere to be found, and it was now time for me to return back to harbour and town along with my prize, the monster known as Slug. I asked it one more time, "Where is Steve?" But, as usual, it said nothing in return. It was time to head off, leaving Steve behind, but bringing the Slug with us. At first things seemed so easy. The Slug was compliant and docile, completely under my control. But I hadn't seen that its eyes were already glowing as it was starting to waken and starting to realise the fate that it was being led to. As the monster started struggling with his chains, he began pushing us faster and faster down the hill, threatening us with our own demise as well as his own. I didn't know if I'd be able to restrain him much longer. Could I keep us both under control and get back to the safety of harbour and town? I guess not. I shakily crawled out of the locomotive and began surveying the damage. Our trusty steed was teetering on the edge of the hill and was in danger of being plunged into the precipice below. Slug hadn't fared much better either. He was on his side, looking quite a forlorn sight. I got out my magic wand and shouted, You'll have to do better than that to get rid of us, Slug. And with my magic wand, I conjured him back onto the rails. We also rescued our steed with the magic wand and placed him next to Slug, ready to chain the monster up once more. Even though I could tell that Slug was still dazed after the incident, the fight had not left him entirely, as he continued to push us further and further down the hill, even now, whilst I was regaining control over him. Once more, I showed Slug who was boss. And as the shackles finally tightened around Slug one more time, I could sense that he was not going to give us any more trouble. Slug knew that he had been defeated, and he had been vanquished again. All that was left now was to take our prize back to harbour and town and show the citizens they weren't going to have any more trouble with this particular monster. And so, true to my belief, we had no more problems with the Slug on the way back. Everything remained quiet and peaceful, and our return journey now was uneventful. When I finally reached harbour in town, there was nobody to be seen. The townsfolk, having heard that Slug was on his way, had all gone and hidden themselves in fear that the monster might be wreaking havoc on the town once more. I had to show them that the monster was now under control and that Slug was going to be a faithful servant in future. I hopped out of our loco one last time and decided that I would go and get it repaired. It was the least I could do for the faithful service it had provided me. I turned back and took one last look at the locomotive, our faithful steed, which had helped us along the way, and then at Slug, who was formerly a monster and now was going to be a fantastic assistant for us. Well, let's go and pay the repairs on our locomotive. Let's see how much it cost. So unfortunately in Derail Valley, even when you win, sometimes you lose. You lose financially. So I go to the career manager and I find that I only have to pay $1,978 in fees, which is a win, because now I have Slug at my disposal to help me carry future loads within the valley. That leaves us with 38,000. Hopefully in our next episode, we'll be able to use Slug to gain extra money so that we can go ahead and purchase that new locomotive that we've had our eye on. So that concludes the Legend of Steve, Monster Vanquisher in Derail Valley. If you liked this episode, please consider subscribing, as Grandpa Playing Games brings you much more action in Derail Valley in the future. Oh, and by the way, if by chance you happen to come across Steve wandering through the valley somewhere, please let him know. I've got his monster and his garage keys.